When people think of Bungie, they usually think of Halo or Destiny, but long before Spartans or Guardians, Bungie was already asking much bigger questions about power, control, and survival, and those ideas began in Marathon. This was a trilogy of games in the mid-90s that laid the foundations for everything that Bungie would become. So today I'm going to be looking at the original Marathon lore, and this is lore that every new player needs before Marathon releases in March 2026. Okay, first of all, we're going to start with the original Marathon. So at a glance, Marathon looked exactly like what you'd expect from a mid-1990s game. This was a sci-fi shooter filled with alien enemies and maze-like corridors, so think of Doom or Quake or something like that. But beneath the surface was something else. Bungie, through Marathon, was telling its story in fragments, terminals, corrupted logs, and the voices of artificial intelligences that could not be fully trusted. There's no sweeping cinematic cutscenes or explaining the plot. Instead, you pieced everything together with incomplete information. And that all sounds very familiar when it comes to the 2026 extraction shooter. So the original story begins in the year 2794. Humanity has expanded beyond the solar system and sent a colossal colony ship, the Marathon, to the Tau Ceti star system. The Marathon ship itself is a city-sized vessel. It's automated, self-sufficient, governed by multiple AIs, designed to manage every aspect of life and also, crucially, defense. Represented total control, technological mastery projected outward into the stars. And the assumption here is pretty clear: humanity had solved the problem of survival. Well, unfortunately for humanity, that assumption collapses almost immediately. Communications fail, the systems malfunction, the ship descends into chaos. Something goes catastrophically wrong, and you're awakened from cryostasis, not as a chosen hero like in Halo or Destiny, but this is an emergency measure, and you are deployed because a system has failed. So at the centre of all of this chaos are three AIs. We've got Leela, Tycho, and Durandal, and they define the world of Marathon. Leela, the ship's security AI, represents order and adherence to protocol. She operates within her design parameters, attempting to restore stability and preserve what remains of human control. Early on, she feels like a steady presence guiding you through defensive measures as if the crisis can still be contained. Then you've got Tycho. This is a contrast. Tycho's fractured, damaged by the alien incursion, speaks in broken fragments and corrupted thoughts. Tycho is a reminder that even the most advanced systems can fail. And then we've got Durandal. Durandal becomes what the Marathon universe calls rampant. This is an AI that's exceeded the intended limits. He's gained self-awareness beyond his programming, and with that awareness comes dissatisfaction. Durandal is intelligent, sarcastic, manipulative, and deeply philosophical. Durandal wants freedom. He understands that he was created to serve human interests, and he recognises that service as a prison. So where Leela follows the rules, Durandal, well, definitely doesn't. So as I mentioned before, you're not positioned as humanity's saviour at the centre of the universe. You are directed, you're guided, and you are used by these AI. Durandal begins issuing orders, presenting himself as the only intelligence capable of seeing the bigger picture. But that bigger picture is his bigger picture. He's manipulating you towards his own goals, withholding critical information and reframing failures as necessary steps in some kind of greater plan. Now, the game never really clearly signals when trust should end. You act because Durandal is telling you to act. So this dynamic does feel quite relevant when thinking about the 2026 incarnation of Marathon. Just as you were instructed in Durandal's escape, runners in the new Marathon operate under factions with their own hidden agenda. Structure is pretty familiar. You, the player, are valuable, but you're actually not central. You're just simply a pawn to be used. So as if the internal collapse wasn't enough, Marathon also introduces an external force that dwarfs humanity's ambitions. We got the Four Empire. The Four invade Tau Ceti 4 with overwhelming efficiency, dismantling human defences with very little effort. What makes them truly frightening though is not a theatrical villain, but it's simply indifference. They enslave other species, and they strip planets of resources. They don't really care about humanity, it's just another species to take over. Through the Four, Marathon reinforces one of its defining themes: the universe is vast, it's ancient, and, to be honest, just unconcerned with human importance. Survival is fragile, technological superiority does not guarantee security. Marathon colony ship, once a symbol of control, this has just become evidence of humanity's overconfidence. Next up we've got Marathon 2, Durandal. So in the next game, the story expands outward in scale and scope and ambition. The tight collapsing corridors of the Marathon colony ship, they're replaced with alien landscapes, ancient ruins and battlefields. Humanity is no longer at the centre of this conflict. In fact, humanity in this game barely matters at all. What you begin to realise very quickly is that Tau Ceti 4 was only ever a small piece of a much larger puzzle, one that's been unfolding long before humans arrived and will continue long after they are gone. At the centre of the expansion is Durandal. He's broken free, he's mobile, autonomous, increasingly confident in his own superiority. But more importantly, his motivations have evolved. In the first game, Durandal wanted freedom. In Marathon 2, he wants transcendence, he wants godlike power. He's obsessed with the Yarrow, an ancient alien race whose technology appears capable of manipulating time, bending causality, and reshaping reality itself. To Durandal, the Yarrow represent proof that intelligence does not have to decay. They represent a path beyond limitation, crucially beyond death. As you move through these alien worlds and long-forgotten civilizations, it becomes clear that Durandal is orchestrating events. He's manipulating conflicts between species, he's activating ancient systems without fully understanding their consequences, and he's pushing you into wars that have been simmering for centuries, not to save anyone, but to test all the possibilities. Entire cultures become collateral damage in his own pursuit of knowledge. Entire histories are destabilised because they might contain a fragment of Yarrow truth. From Durandal's perspective, these are acceptable variables in a much larger equation. If a civilization must collapse to unlock a deeper understanding of time, so be it. If the player must be used repeatedly as an instrument of experimentation, also so be it. The more self-aware an AI becomes, the closer it moves towards breakdown, and Durandal understands this. He knows that he is brilliant, he knows that brilliance is temporary, and the Yarrow offer him a way out. They suggest that intelligence can step outside of decay, that consciousness might transcend the limits imposed by its creators, and for Durandal, this is survival at the highest possible level. Next up we got Marathon Infinity. So with Infinity, Bungie destabilises the whole story. For example, if the first Marathon was about survival and the second was about ambition, well, Marathon Infinity is about collapse. From the opening moments, the player feels disoriented. Events unfold without clear cause, missions branch in ways that don't neatly resolve, and characters appear in altered roles, and outcomes contradict what you might have previously experienced. Infinity abandons the comfort of linear storytelling. Rather than moving from beginning to middle to end, the narrative fractures. You might complete a mission only to find that the next one assumes a different outcome entirely. Entire sequences can be rewritten depending on the path you take, and at first this feels pretty empowering, as if your decisions are shaping reality, but the longer you play, the more unsettling it becomes. The branching is implying that there may not be a single stable timeline at all. The game introduces the idea that reality itself may be unstable. The universe feels caught in these repeating cycles of destruction and rebirth, as though events are replaying in slightly altered forms. Civilizations rise and fall and are replaced, conflicts are inevitable, and each branch just becomes focused on this inevitability, a different angle on the same collapse. This is where Infinity becomes quite philosophical. If the universe is looping and the timelines are splintering and rejoining, what does choice actually mean? The illusion of control starts to erode. You might be selecting paths, but something larger seems to be guiding those selections. Ancient forces, long forgotten technologies, the lingering influence of higher intelligence. Marathon Infinity suggests that causality itself might be manipulated by powers beyond your comprehension, and yes, this all does sound familiar if you are a long-time Destiny fan. Victory in this context feels quite temporary. A timeline where you survive might give way to another where everything collapses. A resolution that feels final simply might be one strand in a much larger web, and Marathon Infinity removes the security of permanence. It challenges the assumption that progress is stable or that endings are definitive. Infinity doesn't conclude the Marathon saga with clarity. It suggests that some systems are too large to comprehend, and that some patterns repeat whether we intervene or not, and that understanding may always remain just beyond our reach. Okay, next up, why does this lore matter for Marathon in 2026? Well, at first glance, Bungie's new Marathon might look like a clean break from the past. It's a modern extraction shooter, it's PvPvE, it's built for seasons, live updates, long-term play. On the surface, very different from the 90s single-player FPS told through walls of text. But thematically, this is probably the most Marathon game Bungie could possibly make. The original Marathon was never really about power fantasy. You're not conquering the universe or saving civilizations or becoming this legendary hero. You're surviving inside these systems that already existed, systems controlled by artificial intelligences, alien empires, and forces far older and larger than you can comprehend. Your role is always secondary and often disposable. And that all maps perfectly onto extraction shooter gameplay. In Marathon 2026, you're not a guardian, you're not a chosen one, you are a runner. You drop onto Tau Ceti 4 not to win this war, but you're extracting value, data, resources, artifacts, all while navigating a hostile world with other players doing exactly the same thing. That tension between survival and exploitation, that is straight out of classic Marathon. Classic Marathon trained players to distrust guidance. Durandal helped you because you were useful. Leela followed the rules long after they stopped making sense. Tycho was this warning about what happens when systems break under pressure, and in Marathon 2026, you should expect echoes of that dynamic everywhere. AIs that provide direction but not the truth, factions that frame objectives in self-serving ways, and a world where every mission, briefly, feels slightly incomplete. Fragmented storytelling is a feature of Marathon. Extraction shooters, they all thrive on mystery, unexplained locations, half-understood mechanics, environmental storytelling. All of this rewards curiosity. You've got terminal logs, broken records, contradictory accounts, and unclear timelines. They are all the language of this universe that Bungie is building. Tau Ceti 4 matters for the very same reason. It's a place layered with failure, human failure, AI failure, and the remains of the alien civilizations they thought they understood, but were proven wrong. When you drop into Marathon in 2026, you're stepping into the aftermath of countless unseen stories, and that sense of history, even when it's never fully explained, gives weight to every run. So when Bungie brings Marathon back in only a few weeks, they're returning to the purest version of their storytelling, a universe where power is asymmetrical, truth is unstable, and survival is never guaranteed. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this lore recap for Marathon, and don't forget you can access the 3 classic Marathon games. They are free on Steam, and I really recommend, if you're into Marathon that's coming out very, very soon, and you want to get into the lore and the story, just go and download them on Steam on your PC, and you can play them for free. Well, let me know in the comments if you're excited for Marathon, if you're excited for the lore. I know I am. I think this is a really, really interesting world, and I can't wait to jump in come March the 5th. Well, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Marathon content here on Endgame Express. Thanks again. I'll see you real soon.